what goes into a group and what are the many different things that we can do in a group. And as lots of you know, groups are an important part of the Montessori environment. They're ways that we help through transitions, they're ways that we redirect children, but they're also really important ways that we help enrich children's language and offer them various aspects of culture, such as music, cultural stories, geography. There's all sorts of lovely and interesting things that we can do. And one thing to think about is in groups, we try to go from active to passive. So we wouldn't usually do 2 active things in a row, and we wouldn't usually do 2 passive things in a row. And we try to end with passive. So as we're doing this, well, as you are my children and I will be the adult and we're going to do a group. And just as we're doing it, think about which of these activities might be active and which of these activities might be passive. Thank you for joining my group today. Let's make sure that our backs are nice and tall. Put our hands on our knees. I have a song that I would like to sing with you today. For this song, we're going to need to stand up. Today, you are all going to be current buns. To be current buns. Put our arms like this. 6, 7. Okay. 7 current buns in a baker's shop, big and round with sugar on top. Miss Natalie brought a penny to the baker one day and bought a currant bun and took it away. 6 currant buns in a baker's shop, big and round with sugar on top. Allison came along to the bakery one day and bought a currant bun and took it away. 5 currant buns in a baker's shop, big and round with sugar on top. Alana came along to the bakery one day and bought a currant bun and took it away. 4 currant buns in a baker's shop, big and round with sugar on top. Mary Jane came along to the bakery one day. Sometimes in our classroom, there are some tight places. And if there's someone standing in it, it may be hard to get through. Today I'm going to show you what you can do when you need to ask someone if you can get through. Jen, would you please help me demonstrate? We talked earlier, so you know just what to do. You can stand right here and here. I'm going to pretend that I need to get through where Jen is and that I don't have enough space. Please may I pass? Of course. Thank you. Thank you, Jen. You can take a seat in your chair. If anyone noticed what Jen did when I said, please may I pass, you can put your finger on your nose. Mary Jane, what did she do? She stepped back. She stepped back. If you would like to take a turn practicing how to step back when someone says, please may I pass, you can put your hand up in the air and I will call your name. Elena, would you like to practice? All right, you can come and stand right here. Please may I pass? Yes, thank you. Thank you, Elena. You can take a seat. Anyone else would like a turn, they can wiggle their ear. Okay, looks like we can keep practicing another time. everyone here is going to tap their nose like this. But you can only tap your nose when I'm shaking the maraca. So if you hear the maraca stop, you have to stop tapping your nose. Are you ready? Wow. You all were listening so carefully. You all stopped just when I stopped. Let's see this time. I wonder if when I'm shaking the maraca, you can clap your hands. Remember, only when I'm shaking the maraca. Do you think we can do that? All right, let's try. So we're gonna clap our hands when the maraca is shaking. Today, I have a game to play with you. It's called the question game. Katie bounced a ball. Katie bounced a ball. Jen, what did Katie do?
She bounced a ball.
She bounced a ball. Katie bounced a ball. Allison, who bounced the ball?
Katie.
Katie bounced the ball. Mary Jane, what did Katie bounce?
A ball.
A ball. Katie bounced the ball. Elena, how do you think Katie bounced the ball?
With her hand.
With her hand. Katie bounced the ball with her hand. Sandra, when do you think Katie bounced the ball?
Maybe when she's outside.
When she's outside. Katie bounced the ball when she was outside. Krista, why did Katie bounce the ball?
She was happy.
She was happy. Katie bounced the ball because she was happy. Mary Pat, who is Katie? Who do you think Katie is?
Katie is a little girl.
Katie is a little girl. Katie is a little girl who bounced a ball. Let's see. Allison, who do you think Katie is?
Katie is all of us.
Katie is all of us. Jen, who do you think Katie is?
Katie is my sister.
Katie is Jen's sister. Let's see, Mary Jane, what sort of ball do you think it was?
I think it was maybe a soccer ball.
A soccer ball. Katie bounced a soccer ball. Krista, what sort of ball do you think it was?
Beach ball.
A beach ball. Katie bounced a beach ball. Okay. I have a story to tell all of you. One day, Katie, who was a little girl who was Jen's sister, decided that she wanted to go outside to bounce her beach ball. Our group is at an end. It's time to think of what we would like to do to continue our morning. So, I'm going to offer two options. And for one, you can clap my hand if you're choosing it. And for the other, you can tap my head. Allison, would you like to choose dishwashing or easel painting? Allison is going to choose easel painting. Thank you for all being my children. It was very fun to have you. did anybody notice as we were going through maybe some ideas on what sort of things you think might have been active activities and which ones you thought felt more passive activities? More.
Well, the song was more active because
Yeah.
they were moving.
Yes, the song was definitely more active. Lots of moving around and engaging. Yeah.
Morocco.
The Morocco was also very active. Yeah. Those were both very active activities.
And the skit was more passive.
Yeah, the Grace and Courtesy was definitely a little more passive because although there was some engagement, there was also a lot of sitting and watching as well. Yeah. Is there anything else that felt passive? The story felt passive, yeah. So in that group, I went active, passive, active, passive. I personally like to start on something active because it helps draw the children in and engage them, and end on something passive because it means that the children are usually in a more calm, settled place when you begin to send them out into the classroom, rather than just coming off of going and then being like, okay, now go work. One of the things that I would like to point out towards the bottom here is it says children should not be forced to join a group, and if a child is unable to be in a group respectfully, then he should be invited to choose something else. So as children in a group, there is a way in which they need to act in order to be respectful to the people around them, so that their friends are able to enjoy the group, and whoever's running the group is able to run it in a smooth manner. So even when there's large groups happening, if a child does not want to be in the group and would rather be working on something else, they're always welcome to do that, unless we're in some sort of special circumstance where we need all of the children to be in one place during a time. And then if a child is in a group and unable to be redirected towards positive behavior in the group, then the adult running the group or another adult within the classroom should, in a positive way, remove that child from the group. So that can look like tapping the child on the shoulder and saying, oh, you know what, I have something else that I would like you to do in the classroom, and then giving a suggestion. It could even be some sort of special job, such as taking out the compost, or I noticed a shelf was really dusty, I wonder if you're able to go dust it. And if a child you think will continue to be disruptive in the rest of the classroom, if you're able to get another adult to come over and have that child be with them so that the group is not being disrupted. So we have some considerations here of what you should do before calling a group. So you'll notice that I had my materials ready with me before the group was called. I have a chair where I'm sitting, my back is to the wall, and I'm facing the rest of the classroom. I had chairs that were set up and ready for my children to sit in. So these are all things that we want to consider before we ask children to be in a group. We want to make sure that our space is prepared so that the group can begin smoothly. Because if we're having to go out and get things during the group, which often happens, sometimes we'll forget something, or we just need to start a group right away and then gather the things, but tend to really lose the children's attention during that time. So even though my children were already in the group, for calling a group, there's many different ways and different styles that different adults like to use to call children to a group. One of my favorite methods is I like to just walk past the child and sing their name, and they usually just follow me. And then I point out to them a seat in the group. Lots of adults like to whisper a child's name. Some adults will go up and say, I'm running a group, come and join me. So there are many different ways that we can invite a child. And something also to consider is as you're seating your children, especially if you have children who you maybe don't want to sit next to each other. So considering whether you're going to let them choose their spot or if you would like to choose a spot for them to help them be successful in that group. And then there are many different ways to begin a group. Like I was saying, I like to start with an active activity. It's often good, we see here like a finger play or a movement song is really good. There's a game called the Mirror Game, which we can practice later today. A listen and respond game, which is something like with the maraca that I just did, where the children are listening for either a verbal command or a sound command, and then responding through their actions. We have a rain stick here. I like to use these for beginning and ending stories, but lots of people use these to signify that a group is beginning. So when they have all of the children seated, they would just and then the children know that the group has begun. And that tends to catch their attention as well. Yep. And it's often good to start with some little prompt or reminder of how our bodies are in a group. So that could be, I wonder if your feet are flat on the floor, or your hands are in your lap, or your back is straight. But it's good to make sure that if you're using these regularly, you need to change them up. Because if you say at the beginning of every group, just have your back straight and your hands in your lap, the children will just start to ignore you after a while because it's not interesting anymore. It's too much of a almost badgering at that point. So we want to keep changing it up to new points of interest of how our bodies are in a group. And then at the end, I gave a demonstration of dismissing with a guided choice. So I offered 2 options. So I was guiding the child towards what they could choose next. Sometimes that might even just be one option, but framed in a very nice way. So if I had said to Allison, there are so many dishes that are dirty at dishwashing, and I know that you know how to wash dishes really well. You can go and get all of those dishes scrubbed and clean. But you have to make sure that it's something that the child will actually really want to do, because otherwise you run the risk of them going, no.
Well, you just made me really want to do it.
Just
by the way you invited us.
And then we also have some examples here of more open-ended choices. So sometimes you can ask prompting questions of some examples here are, what is your favorite thing in the classroom? Maybe you would like to choose that next. Or what material would you like to put your hands on today? And these are ways to help children start thinking about what they're going to choose next when they're at a point in their development or during the year where you're confident that they will be able to choose a material coming out of the group. If you are confident in your group that they will be able to choose materials next, sometimes you can just sing their name one at a time and they can leave the group to choose something else. It's usually small groups like this are geared towards younger children, but we do allow older children to join. We just don't want a full group of older children in the morning. And often if an older child or 2 does come and sit down, invite them to be your helpers. So we'll talk more about grace and courtesies in a little while, but often, as you saw with Jen, you might like an older child to assist you in demonstrating a grace and courtesy. They can help lead games and sing songs and put stools or chairs away afterwards. And these are great ways to incorporate older children in the group in a constructive way. So as many of you are familiar with grace and courtesies, these are small skits that adults and children do in order to demonstrate graceful and courteous behavior. And this is the way that we treat the environment respectfully, the people around us respectfully. They're the way that we show children how to navigate social situations. And they really are, my trainer said, they're the grease to the environment. So they're what makes everything run smoothly. And they're very important. So we have here, there are 2 different types of grace and courtesies. There are language-based grace and courtesies, and there are movement-based based grace and courtesies. So a movement based grace and courtesy it could have language, but it's something that the goal of what you're trying to express to the child is expressed in movement. So an example of one that we have here is sneezing into your elbow, which is very clearly movement based. But another time you might give a grace and courtesy of how to say bless you afterwards or thank you, and that would be a language based grace and courtesy. So both of these types of grace and courtesies are very important and go hand in hand together, and we use grace and courtesies to build upon each other. So for example, when I gave the grace and courtesy of please may I pass, the offer that I gave to the child was to practice being the person who moved away. And the next time that I gave this group, the offer would be to the child to practice saying, please may I pass. And the reason for that is we want to give them lots of time to hear this language repeated before we're asking them to give the language back to us. So that's why we'll often start with something more movement-based and almost in a way place the emphasis on the movement and then continue to offer the language. So sometimes in our classroom, we need to carry objects that are delicate. Delicate means that it can break very easily. Today, I'm going to show you how to carry a delicate object. I'm going to walk behind you, so you might need to turn around a little bit to be able to see. And then at that point, I would again continue to invite anyone who wanted to take a turn practicing carrying a delicate object. And at another point, a new point of interest might be thinking of different objects in the classroom that are delicate as a group and asking the children for ideas. And when I offer the option to the children, I will usually ask that they express interest through some sort of movement of their body, like touching their nose, putting their hand in the air, those sorts of different ways of doing it. And we want to give all of the children as many opportunities as they would like. So if you go through all the children and there's somebody who wants another turn, if you have the time and you're able to, give them another turn because they really need that practice. And these grace and courtesies, we often think, I think in our brains, that we're going to get pretty immediate results from them, and the children are just going to start doing these things beautifully afterwards. But really, the repetition and the practice is important. So this is why we offer the same grace and courtesy, but with many different points of interest and many different opportunities to practice it in different ways, because this allows for repetition, which allows the children to perfect these movements and be able to use them in the classroom. So this would be a language-based grace and courtesy, because the thing that I want to come across the most to the children is the language that I'm giving. So this means I will minimize my other body movements in order to have the focus be on the language. Okay. Sometimes there's someone new in our classroom that we might not recognize. Could be a child that we don't recognize. Could sometimes be an adult that we don't recognize. When we do that, there's a way that we can introduce ourselves. I'm going to show you how to do that today. Allison, would you please be able to pretend to be someone that I don't know? And you can stay sitting right there and I will introduce myself to you. Great, thank you. Hello, my name is Natalie. What's your name?
Hi Natalie, my name is Allison.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Natalie.
I saw that you were all watching and listening. If you heard what Allison said when I asked for her name, you could put your hand on your forehead. Elena, what did she say?
She said, my name is Allison.
Yeah, she said her name. Now I know who she is. And then at this point again, I would offer the children an opportunity to practice. So that might look like, if you would like a turn pretending to be someone I don't know that I'm introducing myself to, you can put your finger on your ear. And again, for the first one, I am the one doing the majority of the repeating of the language, but moving on to a later grace and courtesy, I would invite the children to practice being the person who is introducing themselves to get that repetition in. Objects, and then into the next couple of weeks, you might want to pull out more complex objects like a doily or something, some fun things in the classroom that the children might not know the names of yet. Right. You can see that on my Chowkey, I have some objects that you may or may not know the names of. Cotton ball. Cotton ball. Vase. Vase. Apron. Apron. If you see a cotton ball, go put your hand over it. Everyone sees a cotton ball. Can you point to the cotton ball? If you see a vase, put your finger on your chin. Allison, can you put your finger on the vase? Allison put her finger on the vase. Thank you, Allison. If you see an apron, put your hands in your head. Sandra, can you pick up the apron? Sandra picked up the apron. Thank you, Sandra. I wonder if Mary Jane can find the cotton ball and put it in my hand. Thank you, Mary Jane. So you could continue the game in this way. This one we have a large group for, but I would often play this game with a smaller group of 3-year-olds. And I would often have them sitting on the ground just to be a little bit closer, but as you can see, it still works sitting in chairs or on stools. And it's good to try to be creative with your commands and think of new ways that the child can interact with these objects while repeating the names as often as possible. When you reach a point where you're confident that the children in your group will know the names of this object, or if you have older children in your group who you know for sure know the names of the objects, then what you can do is you can say, Mary Pat, what's this?
Cotton.
It is a cotton ball. I wonder if anyone knows what this is called. If you know what it's called, you can say its name out loud. A vase. And so you can kind of, again, be varied in the way that you ask the children to recall and give back those words. But if you just have a little group of 3-year-olds, I would say in the first one, don't ask them to give the language back to you, but just continue offering the language, because 3 new 3-year-olds in a group like this are unlikely to be able to give the language back to you unless they already knew the language before the group began. So now we can get into some fun games to play. So I'm going to return these objects to where they belong, and we're going to take a look at sound games. So sound games are ways that we help the child to be able to understand that words are made up of individual sounds. And there are many different levels to sound games, but children can play sound games when they first enter the children's house, and then they progress through the different levels of the sound game throughout their whole experience in the children's house. So in a sound game, we're going to choose objects from the environment and ask the child to bring us those objects. So they can go at a chowkey or at a mat, but whatever you're going to have the children place them on, you should have in place before the group begins, if you know that you're going to want to do a sound game. When you're choosing objects, it's good to choose objects that the children are familiar with. And this is part of the reason why we play games like this, because it gives us a basis of vocabulary which we can play sound games with. And you also really want to be aware, as you'll see, of what objects you're choosing and making sure that they start with a clear first sound if you're doing first sounds, and if you're doing ending sounds, that they end with a clear sound. So for instance, you don't want to choose objects that start with 2 vowels, or that start with, often at the beginning, you don't want to start with words that aren't a sound that we introduce through the sandpaper letters, for example. I would like to play a sound game with you today, but we're going to need some objects to play with. Mary Pat, can you please find a pencil and bring it to the chowkey? Thank you. Sandra, can you please find a basket and bring it to the chowkey? Thank you. Krista, can you please find let's do a fork. Can you find a fork and bring it to the chowkey, please? Mary Jane, can you please find a pitcher Okay, so we can see that on our table here, we have a pencil. Pencil. Basket. Basket. Fork. Fork. Pitcher. Pitcher. Book. Book. Mat. Mat. Mary Pat. There is an object on the chowkie in front of you that begins with the sound. What do you see that begins with the sound? Mat. Mat begins with the sound. Allison. There is an object on the mat, on the chowkie in front of you that ends with the sound k. K. Do you see an object that ends with the sound k in front of you?
Book.
Book.
Second choice.
Elena. There is an object in front of you that begins with the sound. Which one do you think? Fork. Fork begins with the sound. Mary Jane. There is an object in front of you that begins with the sound. Which one do you think begins with the sound?
Pencil.
Pencil. Krista. There is an object in front of you that begins with the sound B. B. What do you think it could be? Basket. Basket begins with the sound B. Sandra. There is an object in front of you that begins with the sound pitcher. So I would continue with this for as long as the children were interested in it or until I ran out of time. But as soon as you see the children start to start becoming wiggly, or it seems like their eyes are going elsewhere, you're losing their attention, that's a good time to wrap up. Let's do, what did you notice about the objects that I chose, and what did you notice about maybe some of the different levels of difficulty that were displayed in there?
Objects that began with the same sound.
Yeah, I had a few that began with the same sound. Do you have any ideas why that might be?
Like book and basket. Like book has a clear ending sound too, so you can
Yes.
also use that one for ending sounds.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So if you have a child who you want to incorporate ending sounds with, if they know how to do ending sounds, then it's good to have some that start with the same sound and end with different sounds.
It was helpful to narrow down the field of choices for those who might be overwhelmed by the different objects. You brought the two possibilities up to the front of the chunky.
Yeah, and this also goes to our levels of difficulties too. So for a very new child to the classroom, Mary Pat, you were my new 3-year-old in my brain, so I put one mat in front of you, and I said, what could begin with And I think Krista, you were also a young 3-year-old for this game. But for the young 3-year-olds, we want to form that connection between the object, the word, and the sound. So a new 3-year-old at first legitimately has no idea what's happening. They're like, I don't know why this person is asking me about sounds. What does this even mean? Like, I'm so confused. So what we do is until that connection clicks, we just put one object in front of them, because then their brain starts forming that link of, well, there's a basket, and she's saying that something starts with the sound b, and it must be basket. And then eventually they're like, b, basket, yes, okay. So we continue doing that, and then when a child has reached that stage, we can start adding in more objects. So you can go with a child up to about 6 objects in front of them, and also depending, you'll want to see how contrasting you want the sounds to be. So if it's a child who's still really learning to distinguish between the sounds, you would want to do 2 very contrasting sounds. So for instance, fork and basket, b are 2 very different sounds. Well, as if you wanted to increase the challenge a little bit, you might do 2 softer sounds together, like f and p. Or if I had a bass, like f and that would be a very difficult challenge. So as you continue doing different levels of how many objects and how similar in sound, when a child has begun to master this, you can move to end sounds. And you would want to start with 2 that have the same beginning sound and different end sounds. And then as with the first sound, you can increase in difficulty and the amount of objects and the similarity of the ending sounds and all this sort of stuff. Another one that we do is the exploring all of the sounds in a word. And for this one, you can have objects, but you don't necessarily need to, depending on the age of the children in your group. But what this would look like is if I had a group of children and I had a child who I thought was ready to start exploring all of the sounds in a word, I might say, this is a mat. I wonder what sounds we can hear in mat. Allison, what do you think is the first sound in mat? Krista, what sound do you think comes after and in at? Elena, what sound do you think comes at the end of at? At. We heard all of the sounds in mat. So that's a great way to start with something simple and short, having the object in front of you. And this is particularly a way that we prepare children for writing, because we don't want them to just be able to hear the first and last sounds. We want them to be able to hear all of the sounds in a word. So you can start with small, clear words, and then you could one day say to one of your 4-year-olds, I wonder if we can hear all of the sounds in the word giraffe. And you would do it in the same way, starting with the first sound. I wonder what comes next. Giraffe. And this is just to help the children be able to distinguish and pull apart the sounds. So we have a language activity that can be done in groups called the news period. So the news period this would probably be, well, I would probably do about this size or smaller. I wouldn't go larger than this for a news period because it becomes too chaotic and too hard for the children to wait for their turn. But what a news period looks like, and I'll do an example in a moment, is the adult stands up and clearly and using good vocabulary shares one piece of news with the children. And it can be a short story about your morning, it can be something that happened to you yesterday, it can be pretty much anything. And then the adult invites the children, if anyone would like to stand up and share one piece of news. And then it's always optional. We encourage children to stand up and share a piece of news. Sometimes they just stay sitting while they share a piece of news. And sometimes if we know that something, if the child told us a story that morning, for instance, we might say, I remember that you were telling me about this thing. Maybe you'd like to share this piece of news with the group, which can be a way of helping embolden a child to share. But this it exposes the children to more vocabulary and language, but it's really a confidence building exercise in a way, because we're giving the children the confidence that they are able to express their ideas and thoughts clearly to other people. And this contributes, again, when they get to writing, of I have ideas that are worth sharing. I have thoughts that are worth writing down. And so this is another important way that we show respect to the children and help them to build this confidence and this ability to communicate. And we'll play a short news period. I have some news to share with all of you today. This week, I bought a desk for my room, but it's not just a desk. It has something called a hutch that goes on top of it. And the hutch is like a little bookcase that goes on top of my shelf. And I'm using it to put all of my toiletries on. So all of my perfume, my makeup, my deodorant, all of those things that I need every morning. And it looks very pretty in my room, so I'm very excited about it. If anyone else has a piece of news that they would like to share with the group, they can put their finger on their ear. Children are fascinated by literally anything. Like, if you smile, they're like, wow, this must be the coolest thing ever. So it can be any simple story about your week or about your day.